The laughter was still hanging in the air when it happened. Glasses mid-clink. Forks paused halfway to mouths. His smile still fresh from a joke someone had just told at his table. And then, everything inside him went cold. Not slowly. Not gently. All at once. Because standing near the entrance, half hidden by the shadow of the doorway, was a face he hadn't seen in years but had never truly escaped. Her face. He froze where he stood, one hand still resting on the back of his chair, the other brushing the edge of his perfectly pressed jacket. The restaurant didn't actually go quiet, but to him it did. The sounds blurred into a distant hum, like water rushing in his ears. All he could see was her, holding a worn handbag tight against her chest, as if it were armor, shoulders slightly hunched, feet planted uncertainly, like she might turn around and run if someone looked at her too long. She looked smaller than he remembered, thinner, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. And suddenly, despite the wealth, despite the power, despite the name people whisper with admiration, his heart skipped like a scared child's. After all these years, after everything, she stood there blinking under the warm lights, eyes moving across the room slowly, carefully, as if counting exits. Her dress was clean but faded, the fabric stretched thin from too many washes. Her shoes were scuffed at the toes. Her hands shook just a little as she adjusted her grip on the bag. The kind of shaking that comes from nerves, not cold, from knowing you don't belong somewhere, but needing to be there anyway. She took a small breath, steadying herself. Then she looked up, and she saw him. For half a second, she didn't move. Her eyes widened, not in joy, not in anger, but in shock so deep it emptied her lungs. The billionaire, the man whose face now appeared on magazine covers, the man whose name people said with envy and respect, the man who once slept beside her on a mattress on the floor and whispered promises into the dark, the man who broke her heart and walked away without looking back. Silence stretched between them, thick and heavy, even as the room buzzed on around them. A few people noticed. Heads turned. A couple at the next table followed his stare, then looked at her, then back at him. Confusion flickered across their faces. Recognition sparked in some. Whispers began to ripple outward, soft but fast. He remembered her laugh first. How it used to fill the tiny kitchen of their old apartment, while she stirred rice on a single burner stove. He remembered her counting coins at the table, lining them up carefully, making them stretch to cover rent and food. He remembered the way she would smile at him even when she was tired, telling him she believed in him when his own family didn't, when his friends laughed at his dreams, when the world told him to be realistic. She remembered the night he left, the suitcase by the door, the way he couldn't meet her eyes, how he talked about success like it was a train he had to catch or be left behind forever. He promised he would make it, promised he would come back for her, promised everything except what mattered most. Commitment. She remembered standing in that doorway long after he was gone, holding herself together while something inside her quietly broke. Now those memories crashed into the present, sharp and unforgiving. Her face flushed as awareness spread through her. People were staring. At her clothes. At her bag. At the way she stood too close to the door, like a guest who didn't deserve a seat. Shame crept up her spine, slow and burning. She took a step back, instinctively, as if shrinking might make her invisible, as if she could erase herself from this moment before it cut too deep. Her eyes dropped to the floor, avoiding his gaze, already bracing for judgment, for pity, for dismissal. He took a step forward without thinking. The movement was small, but it carried weight. Confidence wrapped around him like a second skin now. Power radiated from him, not because he meant to show it, but because it lived in his posture, his walk, his presence. People moved slightly to make space, as if pulled by gravity. He didn't notice. His focus was locked on her, on the woman who knew him before the money did. For a brief, dangerous moment, he wanted to smile, to say her name, to act like this was a coincidence instead of fate tightening its grip. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she flinched when their eyes met. Maybe it was the realization that the distance between them wasn't measured in years anymore, but in status, in comfort, in worlds lived and worlds survived. She finally looked up again, just long enough for their eyes to meet fully. The contact was electric and painful. Her eyes held questions she didn't ask. His held answers he wasn't ready to give. Time seemed to slow, stretching the space between heartbeats. In that moment, neither of them was rich or poor. They were just two people standing in the wreckage of what used to be. But the balance of power was undeniable. He stood under soft lighting, surrounded by fine wine and influential company, dressed in success from head to toe. She stood alone near the door, carrying the weight of survival on her back. The contrast was cruel, unforgiving, and everyone could see it. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Words failed him. What do you say to the person who knew you when you had nothing, now that you have everything? What do you say when your success feels suddenly exposed, built on sacrifices you didn't make alone? She shifted her weight, preparing to leave. Pride and pain battled inside her. She hadn't come here for this. She hadn't come to be seen like this. And yet, fate had dragged her into his world without warning, without mercy. Neither of them knew it yet, but this moment, this frozen slice of time, wasn't just about the past. It was about to reopen wounds neither money nor years could heal, about to test who they had become and who they had left behind. This wasn't just a reunion wrapped in awkward silence. It was the beginning of a reckoning that would shake them both to their core. They sat across from each other, close enough to share the same table, far enough to feel like strangers. The space between them wasn't empty. It was crowded with years of silence, broken promises, and things that were never said. The chair beneath him was solid, expensive, built for comfort. The chair beneath her felt too hard, too small, like it was reminding her she didn't belong here. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air pressed in, heavy and watchful. He cleared his throat first. His voice came out smooth, steady, practiced. The kind of voice that had closed deals and commanded rooms. He asked how she had been, the words careful, distant, as if he were checking on an old acquaintance instead of the woman who once knew his fears by heart. He smiled politely when he spoke, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. It suggested control, closure, like the past was something neatly packed away and labeled. She answered softly, too softly. Her eyes stayed on the table, tracing invisible lines in the polished wood. She said life had been hard, not dramatic, not angry, just honest. Two words that carried years of struggle. Long nights, missed meals, doors closed without explanation. She didn't go into details. She didn't need to. Her tired voice told the story well enough. The imbalance between them screamed without sound. His watch caught the light every time he moved his hand. The face clean and heavy, worth more than she paid for rent in a year. His suit fit him like it had been born on his body. Hers hung a little loose, a little worn, shaped by time and compromise. Around them, the restaurant continued to breathe. Glasses clinked. Laughter rose and fell. But at nearby tables, heads leaned in, whispers slid across the room. Some people recognized him. You could see in the way their eyes widened, the way phones were subtly turned face down, the way conversations paused. That's him, the billionaire. Others didn't know who he was, but they noticed her, the way she sat stiffly, the way her hands folded and unfolded in her lap, the way she apologized with her posture before she even opened her mouth. She did apologize. Quietly. She said she was sorry for interrupting his evening. Sorry for showing up unannounced. Sorry for taking his time. The words came fast, like she was afraid he might cut her off if she didn't get them out quickly. Then she explained why she was there. She had heard through someone that he might be able to help. Just a referral. Just a name. A door opened slightly. She said it like it was nothing. Like asking didn't cost her pride. But the word help hit him harder than he expected. Help. It echoed in his head, sharp and uncomfortable. Years ago, that word had belonged to her. She was the one helping him, paying bills when he couldn't, encouraging him when he failed, believing in him when belief felt foolish. And now, here she was asking him. The power had shifted completely, and he could feel it, taste it. It made his chest swell and tighten at the same time. He nodded slowly, listening, but his mind raced. Part of him felt powerful, needed, important. Another part felt exposed. Uneasy, like the foundation under his success had cracked just enough to show what it was built on. He offered sympathy in measured doses. He told her he was sorry life had been tough. He said things like, "I know how hard it can be," without ever admitting that he no longer truly knew. He kept his distance emotionally, even as they shared a table. He talked about his work, his travels, his busy schedule, not to brag outright, but enough to make the difference clear. Subtle reminders of how far he had come. Each sentence was another brick in the wall between them. She nodded at the right moments, offering small smiles, absorbing every word like a quiet punishment. Inside, she reminded herself to breathe, to stay composed. She had survived worse than this. She had survived nights when the lights went out and she pretended it was a game. She had survived being forgotten. This was just another test. Another room where she had to shrink to fit. Then her eyes dropped to his hand. The ring was simple but unmistakable. Gold. Clean. Certain. It rested there like it had always belonged. Her breath caught before she could stop it. Her heart stuttered, then raced. She hadn't planned to ask. She hadn't even let herself think about it. But the question slipped out, fragile and unguarded. "You're married?" The table went still. He hesitated, just for a second, long enough for the answer to form fully, long enough for her hope, buried deep and quiet for years, to flicker once. Then he said yes, calmly, clearly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. The word hit her like a blow to the chest. Her hands began to shake, not violently, but enough that she noticed, enough that she had to press them together to hide it. All these years, she had imagined him still chasing dreams, still working, maybe still alone. Somewhere, some part of her had believed that if he ever came back, it would be to her. Now that belief shattered in an instant. He had built a life without her. A full one. A complete one. The injustice burned hot and sharp. Not just the money. Not just the difference in status. But the abandonment. The way he had moved forward while she stayed behind, carrying the weight of what they once shared. The way her sacrifice had been erased by time and success. The tension thickened, heavy enough to choke on. This wasn't awkward anymore. It wasn't polite. It was painful. Every breath felt louder. Every second stretched. She looked at him, really looked at him, and wondered if he could see the cost of his choices written all over her face. He looked back, realizing too late that the past he thought was buried was very much alive. And sitting right across from him, she rose from the chair slowly, like her body was asking permission to move. Dignity was the only thing holding her together now. Thin but stubborn, she gathered her worn handbag, smoothed the front of her dress, and offered a small nod that said she was done. Done explaining. Done hoping. Done bleeding in public. The room felt tighter as she stood, like the walls leaned in to watch her leave. He watched too, a strange panic crawling up his chest. But he didn't stop her. Not yet. His mouth opened, then closed. The words didn't come. That was when the door opened again. She entered with ease. Not rushed. Not unsure. Elegant in a way that didn't need to announce itself. Her heels made a soft, steady sound on the floor as she crossed the room, every step confident, every breath calm. Heads turned again, this time for a different reason. She carried herself like she belonged everywhere she stood. She smiled at the host, at a passing waiter, at the world, and then her eyes landed on the table. On him, and then on her. The ex froze mid-step, caught between leaving and staying. The wife stopped walking. For a brief second, the two women looked at each other, measuring without meaning to. One polished by comfort, the other shaped by survival. The tension snapped tight, sharp as a wire. This was the moment people waited for. The jealousy, the anger, the scene. But it never came. Instead, something unexpected crossed the wife's face. Recognition, not the kind that burns, the kind that understands. Her eyes softened, not with pity, not with ownership, but with respect. She stepped closer, ignoring the murmurs, ignoring the eyes on them, and spoke quietly, like this moment belonged only to the two of them. "Thank you," she said. The word landed strange and heavy. The ex blinked confused, Thank you for what? For leaving? For losing? For surviving? She didn't know how to hold that word, so she just stood there, shoulders squared, refusing to crumble. The wife turned slightly, her hand resting on the back of the chair, grounding herself. She spoke again, a little louder now, enough for the table to hear, enough for the room to listen. She talked about years ago, before the money, before the name, before the confidence. She talked about a man who was hungry and unsure, a man with dreams bigger than his means. She talked about how he almost quit, almost gave up, almost went back to a life that felt too small. And then she talked about her, about the woman standing there with the worn bag and steady eyes. She told him how this woman paid for his first business course when he couldn't afford it, how she sold her jewelry, one piece at a time, to make sure he could attend an interview across town, how she stayed behind, working extra hours, eating less, smiling more, pushing him forward while her own world stood still. She said it plainly, without drama, without blame. The room shifted. Chairs creaked as people leaned in. Forks stopped midair. Even the hum of the restaurant seemed to dim. The story peeled away the shine from his success and laid bare the bones underneath. This wasn't a self-made legend anymore. This was a shared journey with one name erased. He felt it then. Exposure. Like a light had been turned on inside him. Bright and unforgiving. His throat tightened. His hands felt empty. He had told parts of the story before. Clean parts. Convenient parts. He had never told it like this. Never told it with her standing there, alive and real, carrying the truth in her quiet posture. The power shifted so fast it made him dizzy. He was suddenly aware of how small he felt in his expensive suit, how thin his confidence sounded when weighed against sacrifice. He tried to speak, to correct something, to add context, but no words formed. The silence wrapped around him instead, thick and complete. For the first time that night, he didn't know what to say. The ex didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She simply stood there, hands relaxed at her sides now, her spine straight. She wasn't asking for anything. Not money, not credit, not apology. Her strength was in her stillness, in her refusal to perform pain for an audience. She let the truth exist without decoration. People looked at her differently now, not as an interruption, not as a problem, but as a presence, someone who had endured, someone who mattered. He saw her then, really saw her, not as the poor girl he left behind, not as a reminder he wanted to forget, but as the backbone of a story he claimed as his own. He saw what he lost, and it wasn't just love, it was integrity. It was a version of himself who once knew gratitude. The version who understood that success built on sacrifice should carry humility with it. Her poverty had never been weakness. It was endurance, quiet, relentless, unapologetic. And his wealth, for the first time, felt heavy, like a coat he couldn't shrug off, like a debt he didn't know how to repay. The wife reached out then not to him, but to her, a gentle touch on the arm, an acknowledgement without words. The ex nodded once. Just once. Enough. She turned toward the door again, ready to leave for real this time. He finally stood. The movement was sudden, desperate. Chairs scraped. Heads lifted. He took a step after her, his heart pounding loud enough to drown out the room. He wanted to call her name, to stop her, to say something that might matter. But she didn't look back. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. And as she crossed the threshold, carrying the truth with her, he was left standing there, exposed, silent, and painfully aware that the story wasn't over yet. The cold night air hit him as soon as he pushed through the door. It stole the breath from his lungs and cleared his head all at once. The sound of the restaurant faded behind him, replaced by the low hum of the street, distant traffic, a city that never stopped moving. She was already a few steps ahead, walking fast, shoulders squared, as if she were afraid that as she slowed down, the weight of everything might finally pull her under. He didn't call her name at first. He just followed, the space between them heavy with everything he owed her. "Wait," he finally said. His voice cracked. That alone shocked him. He couldn't remember the last time his voice had done that in public. She stopped, But she didn't turn around right away. Her back stayed straight. Her chin lifted just slightly. When she did face him, her expression wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading either. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that comes after you've already cried all the tears you had. "I'm sorry," he said, the words spilling out before he could polish them. Not the clean apologies he was used to making in meetings. Not the kind that fix problems with numbers and signatures. This was raw. Late. Messy. He told her he was sorry for leaving the way he did. Sorry for taking her belief and turning it into a ladder. Sorry for letting time erase her from the story of his success. He didn't offer excuses. He didn't blame circumstances. He didn't hide behind ambition. For the first time in a long time, he just stood there and admitted he had been wrong. She listened without interrupting, without nodding, without softening. The streetlight above them cast long shadows on the pavement, stretching their shapes thin and fragile. When he finished, the silence that followed felt heavier than any rejection. He searched her face, hoping for something. Forgiveness. Anger. Anything that meant the words had landed. "I know what you did for me," he continued, his voice lower now. "I should have said it years ago. I should have honored it. You carried me when I couldn't stand on my own." His throat tightened again. "You deserve better." He reached into his pocket, not for a wallet, but for an idea. He talked about help, about money, about connections, about how he could make things easier now. He spoke like a man who finally understood the size of his debt and wanted to pay it back fast. She shook her head gently. "No," she said. Just one word. Soft. Firm. She told him she didn't want charity. Not now. Not ever. She didn't come there to be rescued. She came because she needed closure, not a check. She needed him to see her, to acknowledge her role, to admit the truth without trying to fix it with wealth. Her refusal wasn't bitter. It was clean, honest, and it cut deeper than any accusation. That choice changed him. He had closed deals worth millions. He had watched stock numbers rise and fall without blinking. But standing there, watching her refuse what he thought was his greatest power, he felt something shift inside him. Something real. He realized that everything he had built could not buy what she was showing him now. Self-respect. Wholeness. Peace earned the hard way. She took a step back, adjusting the strap of her bag. For a moment, he thought she might say more. But she didn't need to. Her eyes held it for a final second, steady and clear. Not broken. Not lost. Whole. Then she turned and walked away. He stood there long after she disappeared into the night, the city swallowing her up without ceremony. He didn't follow this time. He didn't call out. He let her go, understanding that some exits are meant to stay closed. The cold crept into his bones, but he barely noticed. All he could see was the way she walked. Upright, unburdened, strong. When he went back inside, the warmth of the restaurant felt different. Fake. Too soft. Conversations resumed around him, but he heard them from far away. His wife looked up as he approached, her eyes searching his face. She saw it immediately. The change, the weight, the humility that hadn't been there before. He sat beside her and took her hand, holding it longer than usual. He didn't speak right away. He didn't need to. She squeezed back, understanding without words. In that quiet moment, he felt gratitude in a way he never had before. Not for success, but for the chance to be better than the man he had been. That night stayed with him. Not as a memory to hide, but as a lesson carved deep. He learned that success without honor is empty, that the people we step on while climbing often hold the greatest moral power. That dignity doesn't shout. It stands still and waits to be seen. And the truth followed him long after the lights dimmed and the plates were cleared. Wealth can buy comfort. It can buy silence. It can even buy forgiveness, sometimes. But dignity is priceless. And the past always returns, not to punish us, but to ask a simple question. Who did you become on the way to the top?